In New York City, Grand Central Terminal should be on every visitor's must-see list. It's an elegant French Beaux Arts structure in beautiful contrast with the city's modern steel and glass high-rise towers. In 1967, the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission designated the terminal a city landmark. But a decade later, that designation found its way to the United States Supreme Court in Penn Central Transportation Co. versus New York City. Landmark designations restrict property use. A landmark's owner can't replace, upgrade, or improve a structure without approval from the relevant commission. Commissions won't approve changes that impair or interfere with the property's historic or aesthetic aspects. Commissions direct property owners at their own expense to maintain the property to certain standards. Grand Central Terminal's owner, Penn Central Transportation Co., planned to build a 50-story office tower above the terminal. Before construction even began, Penn Central leased out the entire planned tower. The anticipated income during the 50-year lease term would have paid for the tower and provided Penn Central with a hefty revenue infusion. Penn Central submitted 2 alternative development plans to the commission, but the commission rejected both plans, saying that neither adequately protected the terminal's architectural features. Penn Central then sued the city and the commission in state court. The trial court held that the commission's actions constituted an uncompensated taking in violation of the Fifth and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. On appeal, the appellate division reversed, holding that since Penn Central retained some reasonable beneficial use of the terminal, no taking had occurred. New York's highest state court, the Court of Appeals, affirmed the appellate division. Penn Central then appealed to the United States Supreme Court. Justice William Brennan, writing for the court, considered whether a Fifth Amendment taking occurs when a commission limits a property owner's ability to profitably exploit its property. He concluded that the answer was no. States can regulate land use without effecting a Fifth Amendment taking. Brennan explained that the Fifth Amendment's takings clause was designed to prevent the government from forcing one or a few people to bear public burdens that should rightly be borne by the public as a whole. Physically occupying property is clearly a taking, but restrictions or limitations that allow a reasonable use or ability to exploit one's property don't rise to the level of a taking. Moreover, if a law, by prohibiting a particular use, promotes the public's health, safety, morals, or general welfare, no taking occurs as long as there remains to the owner a reasonable beneficial use of the property. Governments couldn't operate if every incidental reduction in value resulting from a regulation entitled someone to compensation. Regulation constitutes a taking only if it wholly frustrates the owner's reasonable investment-backed expectations or otherwise renders the property completely useless. Brennan explained that a takings analysis focuses on the characteristics of a government action and the extent of its interference with an owner's rights in a parcel as a whole. Here, the Commission's objective was to preserve historically significant buildings and areas, and this was a legitimate governmental interest. And Penn Central could still profitably exploit the terminal in the same manner that it had before the Commission designated it a landmark, as a railroad terminal with office space and retail stores. So the Commission's actions didn't constitute a taking. Moreover, the fact that its decision cost Penn Central, and only Penn Central, many millions of dollars in lost revenue did not change the Fifth Amendment calculus. Therefore, the court upheld the state law and affirmed the New York Court of Appeals. Associate Justice William Rehnquist dissented. He noted that the landmark law was unlike generally applicable laws such as zoning regulations. Those encumber all property owners equally, and all owners benefit from the fact that everyone must use their property in a similar manner. This is what Justice Holmes once called, quote, an average reciprocity of advantage, unquote. Here, Rehnquist argued, only a few buildings in all of New York City were subject to the landmark law. Penn Central bore all the costs of the Commission's rejection while reaping no reciprocal benefits. Further, the Commission directed Penn Central at its expense to maintain the terminal, preserving its historic and architectural character. In effect, the Commission exercised complete dominion and control over the terminal. A few years after the Commission rejected Penn Central's proposals, Penn Central filed for bankruptcy. Though the terminal has since passed through at least 3 different owners, the Commission still has the last word on what can be done with it.